Good?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. All right, so as far as splinting, 3 types of splinting. You have rigid, which means that it's hard and fixed. Formable, it can mold around the injury. Or traction, which means you're pulling. You're pulling on the injury to align it back in place. And that's when we talk about shoulder dislocation. That's not really a splint, but that's just an example. Traction. Where this actually applies, the traction splint, is when you have a femur fracture. And I'm not sure if we talked about that yet in this class, but we are gonna go over that. We're gonna go over all these splints, every single one, when we see each other. Or at least I'm gonna try to go over as much as possible. But yeah, that's just the types of splinting. Now, how you splint will be dictated by the actual injury itself, the supplies you have at hand, and your education, how you were educated. There is no right or wrong way to splint. There's let me see if I can remember this. There's oh man, I know I talked about this in the first class, but I'm drawing a blank. I'm gonna have to get back to you guys, but I forget the exact verbiage and the terms, but there's what ultimately needs to be done, right? And then there's the way you do it. Now, how you do it to splint an extremity or any injury, how you do it is based off your education and your resources. But ultimately, you have to splint that extremity, okay? Now, as long as it's splinted, it's in place, and nothing dangerous happened to that patient, it doesn't matter how you splint it, as long as it's splinted properly. And by properly, I mean that it's actually secured and it's benefiting the patient, okay? So that's what I mean by that. And the actual verbiage, there's actual terms for that. I can't remember it right now, but that's what I was gonna get to anyways, was that how you splint or secure injury is based off your education and your resources. All right. As long as you splint it, it ultimately has to be splinted and splinted properly. That's all that matters. And the reason I emphasize that is because for some reason there's a lot of I don't like saying it, but it's true. There's a lot of people with hard heads and egos, real big egos in EMS, and their way of doing it is the right way, and no other way matters, and no other way is right because that's the way they were taught and that's the way it is. Well, that's wrong. There's actually plenty ways of doing things and doing it right, right? And that's the way I just want to kind of open your guys' mind up to that, and not and if you come across that, you don't have to argue with that person, but just understand that they are just that way. They're single-minded when it comes to that. In EMT, maybe not the rest of the world and everything else, but when it comes to EMS and the way they do things, they might be single-minded because they're old school, they were taught this way, but just know that that's not right. There's different ways of doing it and doing it right. These are the different types of material you will find and come across. I've used just about every single one of these except this. The inflatable splints I have not ever come across. But all you do is you put that around the extremity, you inflate it, and the pressure from the inflation will cause it to splint in place. That's what that does. So let me go ahead and show you that video on traction splint.